Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bunker Hill Mining Live Summit, hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce the speakers for today: Richard Williams, the Executive Chairman, Sam Ash, the CEO, and Tom Francis, the General Mine Manager. They'll be sharing the live on-site experience, talking about the portal upgrade, and providing some general updates. After that, we'll be accepting questions. As a reminder, you can submit your questions in the chat at any point during the presentation. If you'd like to contact the Bunker Hill team, feel free to fill out the survey, which will be linked in the chat. As always, this summit is being recorded and will be available to watch on six.com afterwards. Without further ado, I'd like to hand things over to you, gentlemen, so that we can get started.
Thanks very much, Maxim, and thank you very much for everybody for attending and dialing in. This is an exciting update to you brought from the ground. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction from here in Toronto, then we'll hand over to Sam and Tom that will talk you through what's been actually happening at the project. But just before I do that, I want to remind you of what we're here to do. With using the investment capital that we've been provided, we're going to be reviving and modernizing the Bunker Hill mine to be in production in Q4 of next year. We refer to this first phase as Bunker 1.0. It's the restart project, the low capex, high return restart project, which will then use the cash flow generated from production to unlock value in the broader mine and the broader area in stages. And that will lead us, and you'll be hearing more about this in subsequent press releases, to Bunker Hill 2.0. Which is going to be a larger operation unlocked from cash flow over time. But let's just go back to where we are now, which is Bunker 1.0, the restart. Just remembering, and you'll see some of this when Sam and Tom talks, what we sought to do or seek to do, which is sensible in any capital environment, but particularly in an environment that the industry finds itself in now, where capital is both expensive and exceedingly tight, is to leverage all of the sunk cost and of many advantages that we've inherited here on this site and this mine that we now own. And that gets us further down the field than we would be the case if we started from a greenfield position. The second thing you're going to be seeing in the conversation that Tom and Sam will have with you is us modernizing the infrastructure in ways that are both efficient, but secondly, will maximize the returns on any capital deployed. And you'll also see as you listen, you hear and you observe this time on what's happening on the ground, a wish to ensure that we're setting up infrastructure for the long term. So the processing facility, although starting at 1,800 tons a day, will have the capacity to go to 2,500. So that the portal you're going to see, which gets us in to mining very early, is configured and organized so it can deal with larger scale operations. So I repeat again, Bunker Hill 1.0, to leverage all of the sunk cost and the capital we've inherited. Secondly, to focus on modernizing. And then thirdly, to have a look to the long term, the various stages, Bunker Hill 2.0 and on that we're going to be developing. And with that introduction over, thank you for your patience. I'm going to hand to Sam from a far more interesting part of this, which is from the yard. He will then hand over to Tom that will give you a feel for what's happening up at Wardner and where the mining's going to happen. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and it's a pleasure to have everybody here today. Pretty exciting for us to be out in the yard today, and I'll turn the camera around and we'll walk around a little bit and take a look at our mill site. So what you see here, and I'll just pan around, is the location of the mill. The last time we would have talked and the pictures you would have seen, there was still a little bit of work to do with foundation removal. And another key aspect that we've been working on through the summer, you can see, is a little bit more excavation into the wall. So what you see here is the final footprint of the mill installation. And the final civil work you can see here is just finishing up this week. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be moving on to the next phase, which is putting in some deep foundation piers into this area that'll underlie the foundation. So we'll be doing a little bit of geotechnical stabilization. That'll be complete over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll move in earnest into foundation prep and then building construction. I do want to say that the long lead time acquisitions are well on track. The conveyor packages are complete and being constructed. The building is in construction and well on track and on budget. And so from this side, over at the future mill site, everything is progressing well. Apologies for the noise, but the guys are hard at work finishing off the civil work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom up at Wardner at the new portal. Tom?
Thank you very much, Sam. Yes, I'm up at Wardner as the crow flies. I'm just a little over a mile away from Sam at the basis of our mining operations in Wardner. There is a pre-existing haul road that connects the location where I am with Sam, which is a key part of our operational plan. And I'll just briefly talk about two major projects that we've delivered in the last couple of months up here at Wardner. The first is the enlargement and upscaling of the Russell Portal, which I'm focused on right now with the camera, which took it from a 10-foot by 10-foot sort of prefab concrete structure that was just about workable for some of the rehabilitation and decline work we did last year, but not really compatible with the sort of tonnage and volumes that we want to be operating through it. And so we took it from a 10-foot by 10-foot portal to a 16-foot by 16-foot one of prefabs reinforced steel arches. And that gives us the capacity comfortably for Bunker Hill 1.0, as Richard alluded to, and plenty of upside capacity to extend beyond that to Bunker Hill 2.0. So we now have a fit-for-purpose Russell Portal connected with over 150 miles of existing underground tunnels and infrastructure that is going to be suitable for the sort of equipment, the 20-ton haul trucks, the 4 to 6 yard loaders that we'll be bringing in and out of the portal regularly as we get about our operations on a day-to-day basis. Just panning slightly to the right, I also just want to touch on a project that for me is almost more exciting than the Russell Portal, and that is that now up at Wardner, where previously everything we've done has been powered by diesel generators, we are now connected to the mainline grid, and hopefully those power lines and the power poles are visible to the onlooker. And we've partnered with Avista Utilities, the local utilities provider to execute this project. We now have capacity for 1.85 megawatts of power continually to the site at Wardner. And the power lines that you can look at right here go up to a Cherry Raise location just in the far distance, probably not quite visible, which is the most direct route to then drop power down a pre-existing raise there and get it quickly and promptly at the shortest distance possible to underground infrastructure. But that power is designed and engineered for everything that we need for the first few years of the mine life. It comes at incredibly competitive rates that come with Avista and Northwest, Pacific Northwest power that's hydroelectric dominated. And that also gives us the ability now to, from an operating cost point of view, be in a much improved position to operating diesel generators as we start to kind of reconnect utilities through the Russell Portal and get going underground. And I think there's a piece of equipment that's just going to come in view there, completely spontaneous and unstaged, as a snapshot of what's going on at the Russell Portal right now as we get those utilities back through the portal, get back underground, and start to get to those primary locations where we'll be mining within 12 months. That's all from me for now, Richard.
Thanks, Tom. And I've relocated now, and I'm in the shop facility where a lot of our equipment, refurbishment, from Ponderay is underway. So you can see we've been able to reutilize this shop and make it fit for purpose for the rehabilitation activities. You see some of the agitators for the flotation cells there begin the refurbishment process. And this is a very nice facility, and the crews will be hard at work in here doing all of the refurbishment all through the winter months. And with that, Richard, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sam, and thanks, Tom. Again, for the onlookers here, Sam's last little clip of being in the refurbishment facility. It's hard for you to imagine unless you'd been in there before, the before and after photograph. That had nearly sort of 50 years worth of industrial stores in there that they had to clean out, polish up the facility, get it ready for the type of activity you can see there now. That's a really important part of the story too. Buying the Ponderay facility.
And Maxim, I'll at this point, we can turn it over to questions if there's anybody in the audience who has any questions.
Thank you, Sam. We may as well do that straight away. Maxim, any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say that, Richard, if you want to finish your point, but...
It's okay. We can keep going. That's perfect.
Sounds good, yeah. So one of the questions here was the ground what you expected it, as it appears the portal is much farther back than what I would have thought? Did you have to expend more capital than anticipated? And I guess one more question to tie into that. What was the cost of such a big upgrade to the portal?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll hand over to Sam and Tom for this, but I'll just repeat it just in case they didn't hear, because they're at a working site. Was the cutback we had to do at the portal larger than we expected? Where we managed to do it on budget, and how much did it kind of cost? Sam, Tom?
So Richard, Tom here, I can take that. So firstly, the location of the portal is where we planned it. But secondly, say that we had to kind of move more material than we anticipated to get back to hard rock, which is very much what we wanted to do, to have really adequate fit for purpose portal. So the earthwork phase took a little bit longer than anticipated, and so there was more to move in that regard, but the actual location of the portal, where it's positioned and the mouth, was exactly as per the plan and as per a footprint we have for Wardner. In terms of budget, which is a very good question, we have lumped three kind of mine infrastructure projects together. The Russell Portal, some work on the Cape Fault. I'm just going to keep walking because I think I see my reception dropping in and out, and some further rehabilitation work underground. And so with regard to the collective pot of money for those three infrastructure projects, we're on budget and we're comfortable with that. And we're on schedule, and we're feeling good about where we are there. So there were more earthworks for the Russell Portal. That did take a little bit longer, but in the collective budget of those three mine infrastructure projects, we've identified some savings elsewhere. And so overall, we're confident that we are on budget for those mine infrastructure projects.
Thanks. And it's a great question, of course, and again, in a valley like the Silver Valley, we welcome these type of questions, because actually we're all learning about the nature of the environment. And again, the cutback that we did had to be a little bit longer in terms of depth than we'd expected. But as Tom outlined, we've covered all that within the overall budget. But that's great. Good question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And what are the next catalysts coming up now?
The next catalyst, well, I'll touch off with that, but then I'll then go to the guys to talk about what's happening on the ground. The next catalyst, as I've mentioned, Bunker Hill 2.0, which is some engineering and study work we're doing to have a look at what the mine would look like in, say, 3-4 years' time. We're going to get the mine in production. and generate the cash required to dewater the mine, bring some of those inferred resources that were previously reserves back into M&I and reserves, and have a look to see what we can do to get our production up to that 2,500 tons a day operation. We're going to be sharing that with you all imminently, and we call it Bunker Hill 2.0. But the level of the study work that we're going to be doing will be at this stage necessarily a PEA. So we'll be releasing a PEA to give you a feel for what the net present value of that project would look like imminently. And it's really important for people that have been watching this story and watching all the work we're doing. This is part of a phased unlocking of value at Bunker Hill, maximizing the use of reinvested cash flow. We're not going to be going back to the equity markets to unlock Bunker Hill 2.0. We'd want to take that PEA all the way to a feasibility study level and then go to bank finance should that money be required beyond what we think cash can generate. So you're going to see all of that, and we're going to be very happy to share that with you. That's the next big catalyst that I would present at a strategic level. But Tom, Sam, why don't you talk a little bit about what's happening on the ground between now and, say, end of Q1 next year, so the next sort of 4 or 5 months of activity, please. Sam, I'll hand over to you for that. Sam, could you hear? You're on mute. Okay, Sam can't hear me. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, Richard, I can hear you. And so talking about the next couple of months up at Wardner, and I'll talk about Wardner as that's where I'm physically located. The Russell Portal and the power upgrade to which I've already referred were really the kind of 2 enabling steps to unlock the activity that's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 months. And primarily that's going to be about getting the mining teams back underground, continuing the rehabilitation so we've got access to the first stopes that we'll be mining in the very near future. I mean, we actually will have access to those in the next 3 to 4 months. And but then we want to do the additional development to make sure that we have all of the heads and an underground workshop established, and all of that sort of going well. So there'll be a lot of activity underground, setting up the infrastructure. 2 other things that I'd probably call out in that regard are we've just purchased and received a new compressor. So when I talk about the utilities, we're coming off, we'll be having an electric power generator from the grid. We'll be connecting, an electric powered compressor powered off the grid. We'll be connecting that. We've got our new mainline 7-foot fan, and we'll be establishing that and starting to make sure we've got the adequate ventilation plan underground. And then we'll also be starting to, and I'll pan around to see if the view is acceptable to kind of viewers, but we'll also be starting to make some other improvements in our general footprint up at Wardner. We're going to have a couple of stressed sort of tent structures that will allow us more workspace during winter up here to work on the equipment and our heavy mobile equipment fleet, which is kind of growing gradually in the background. We've got a pre-existing maintenance shop in the foreground here, and I'll touch very briefly on the warehouse in the near front here. That, believe it or not, has been identified by our study partners at Senko as an opportunity for housing our paste plant facility. And so we'll be upgrading that building and carrying out some LiDAR scanning and some assessments to make sure that that is going to be fit for purpose for a paste plant facility. And that work will be happening, that assessment and upgrades will be happening over the next few months there. So that's a snapshot for what will be going on over the next sort of 3 to 4 months at Wardner.
Sam, can you hear us? Again, comms is not perfect here. No, it looks like Sam still can't hear us too. I just want to make a point on the portal at the moment. Thank you, Tom. It's just unlike other Silver Valley mines that are accessed by shaft. Bunker Hill would be the only mine that has got portal access direct to the ore body. And we're going to be actually developing the mine as a result through these portals. You won't just be the only one. You'll hear more about it in the PEA we're going to issue. But we'll have ramp access all the way down to the lower levels and beyond. That makes it different in terms of cost, and it makes it different in terms of productivity. And it's particular to Bunker Hill relative to the other Silver Valley mines. The other Silver Valley mines are excellent, of course, but Bunker Hill has got many differences that allows us to have structurally a different cost and productivity profile. And that's a really important part of that. Maxime, if you could send a message to Sam to see if we can, because he doesn't appear to be able to listen to what we're saying. He may need to move to a different location. But when he does, if you can read out another question, please, we'll take that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll read out a question and I'll get in touch with Sam here. But any surprises, good or bad, on water treatment plan?
Water treatment plan. Now, just to remind you, and I'll hand on to Tom, who's closer to the project than where I am, sitting up here in Toronto. Just to remind you, we inherited a fully functioning and very effective water treatment facility that is run initially by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, but is now run by the IDEQ, that's the Idaho equivalent. That processing facility works now, discharges water into the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River in accordance with all reputable standards, and will be operating through this operation and beyond in closure in many decades' time. There hasn't been anything with respect to the management of water during this project that hasn't been able to be covered by that existing and well-established facility. The team on the ground work, in lockstep with the IDEQ and the EPA in terms of the management of both the bunker water to the water treatment plant and then thereafter. And so actually the whole thing is operated in a sort of one team concept across the agencies as well as with the company. Sam, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. Apologies for that. I was not able to hear any of the conversation for the last few minutes, but I'm back online successfully now. Okay,
well, the question which I've just tried to answer is from David Kaplan, and thank you, David, was have we had any surprises from a water treatment perspective as the project's gone in, upside or downside? And my answer was effectively, with the water treatment in place and existing plan, we haven't had any surprises up or down. But if there's anything from your perspective you want to share, please do so now.
Well, David, right from day one, we knew that water and water quality and it was going to be, one of the key the key environmental focus of the project. So we put a lot of effort in early on, extending right back from early 2020 to understand the water. And I'll just remind everybody, we've talked about this before, but there's 1,500 gallons a minute that comes out of the mine that requires treatment. It's low pH and high metal loads. That real-time information is available on our website for everyone to see. It is treated at the central treatment plant and then subsequently discharged. But what we found incredibly interesting is when you follow that water back into the mine and you identify where's the problem areas in the mine, we find that 80% of the problem is out of a water stream that's about 20 to 30 gallons a minute, depending on the time of year, high up in the mine. And we think that as we get into operation and we become more active in the underground, and in particular, we begin to deposit paste tailings in not only our active mining areas, but in the historic mining voids, that we're going to directly begin to positively impact the overall water quality and reduce the treatment intensity of the water coming out of Bunker Hill. So, as opposed to any downside surprises, up to this point, we've been favorably surprised at what we're finding, and we're pretty confident in our ability to impact and reduce the intensity of water treatment required over time.
Excellent, thank you. And what are the near-term grade and reserve numbers? Will you begin toll milling before mill startup?
Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've always talked about that that we're open to the opportunity of pre-production ore sales. And we are continuing to look and investigate that. You heard Tom say earlier that we have about 2 to 3 months worth of work to be in a position where we could be a consistent supplier of ore feed, and we're working along those lines. We have found that there is some interest, but we have a bit of work to do on our side to make sure on the mining side that we're up and ready to do that. We're doing that work, having those conversations. When we talk about the head grade of the mill, it's definitely more zinc dominant as we start the mine life and through the first few years of the mine life. And what you're looking at is anywhere from 9 to 10% zinc equivalent on the grade. And most of that is coming, from the zinc component. On the silver side, we're running anywhere from 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces per ton on the pure silver grades to the mill feed.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. And moving into production, what are your challenges to find skilled labor to secure mining production?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And what we're finding right now is that, we're very ideally placed. So the Silver Valley in northern Idaho, it comes from a strong mining history and heritage. There's operating mines in the Silver Valley, but in addition to that, there's a lot of mining professionals who call the Silver Valley home, who travel for work and work remotely all across the Western United States and Western Canada. And up to this point, we've had tremendous interest from the mining pool locally to come and be a part of this restart. A lot of the guys we talk to, a lot of the miners that we talk to, their great grandfather worked at Bunker Hill, their grandfather worked at Bunker Hill, and it's an opportunity to kind of carry on the family legacy, so to speak, to be a part of the Bunker Hill restart. So definitely, we have an eye towards that, but we don't foresee ourselves having any problems. And then particularly on the technical side and the staff side, we're finding that we're able to attract very high quality, high caliber talent. And a lot of it is the project itself, the team we're building, the culture we're building, entrepreneurial, and it's very attractive to professionals who want to come and be part of a very dynamic team that that is focused on restarting a project like Bunker Hill.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have for today. So thank you all for taking us through the wonderful tour of the site and the Q&A session. And I also want to thank everyone who submitted questions. Today's recording will be available to watch on demand in the coming hours, so feel free to look out for that. You can find more information on Bunker Hill by going to their website. And before we wrap up, just going to pass things back over to you, Richard, for any closing remarks.
Thanks very much, Maxim. Another good show, and thanks for bearing with us as we moved around and tested communications and the limits of our technology. I hope it gave you a feel for real activity on the ground. It's always tricky when trying to describe a project through the formal mechanism of public messaging, and so it's far better when we can get you onto site virtually and walk you around. But let me remind you of where we are. We're a project that's being executed now, as put in the press release. We're on budget, on time, on schedule, moving towards a restart in Q4 of next year. This Bunker Hill 1.0, the restart project, is deliberately designed to be a low capex, high return start, a reviving of Bunker Hill as an operation, and then use the cash flow generated to unlock in stages this considerable and long value that exists within this remarkable mine. That will include, and you'll see us sharing that with you, the step known as Bunker Hill 2.0, which takes us from one level of production to the next level up, dependent upon a series of work programs that need to be executed over a period of time and funded from cash flow. We're doing all of this in this way because it's the most capital efficient way to do it. We do it regardless of availability of capital, but it's particularly appropriate at this particular moment in the industry's history when capital is so exceedingly tight for projects of this size and so exceedingly expensive. It was great pleasure for me to be able to share all this with you, and particularly to share Sam Ash's time and Tom Francis's time, who were really down on the site delivering all of this along with the remarkable team that they put together. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for all of you for staying safe and being as effective as you are down there on site. It's a real pleasure to be on your team. Thank you, Maxim, and thanks again for everybody for dialing in.